Lauren Evans had never suspected that the end of her perfect life would begin on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Sunlight streamed across the kitchen floor as she finished her coffee, thinking only of the cluttered basement she had finally resolved to clean. Her husband, Daniel, was already at work. He'd left before dawn, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead as he always did. She hadn't thought it strange. Daniel was dedicated, almost obsessively so, to his engineering firm. Their marriage, to all appearances, was built on quiet routines, unshakable trust, and the certainty that she had chosen the right man. The basement was colder than the rest of the house. Lauren shivered as she stepped down the wooden stairs, noting how damp the air felt on her skin. Boxes were stacked along the walls in haphazard towers. Gardening supplies, Christmas decorations, tools she didn't recognize, so many things she'd asked Daniel to help her sort. He always had an excuse. "It's just old junk," he'd said the last time she brought it up. "Leave it alone. I'll get around to it." But he never did. Lauren pulled on work gloves and began to clear a path. She was halfway through dragging a heavy shelving unit away from the wall when she noticed something that made her pause. Behind the shelf, the concrete wasn't uniform. A fine, straight line framed a rectangle about 4 feet wide. For a moment, she convinced herself it was nothing more than a patch job, something left over from the previous owners. But the lines were too precise. Deliberate. She crouched, running gloved fingers along the edge until she found a shallow depression that felt like a latch. Her heart began to beat harder, a sick anticipation blooming low in her stomach. Daniel had never mentioned any hidden storage. A voice in her head urged her to leave it alone. Just turn around, pretend she hadn't seen it, and walk back upstairs. But her curiosity had already taken root. With a hesitant breath, she pressed the latch. The panel released with a soft, mechanical click. Slowly, it swung open, revealing a crawl space carved into the earth beneath the house. Darkness swallowed the weak glow of the basement light. An icy draft spilled out, carrying with it a smell so foul Lauren clamped a hand over her mouth. Rot. Copper. Sweetness that turned her stomach. For several heartbeats, she could only stand there, trembling. "It's just old insulation," she told herself. Or maybe an animal crawled inside and died. But she didn't believe it. She picked up an old camping lantern from a nearby shelf and thumbed the switch. Pale yellow light flickered to life, casting long shadows across the dirt floor. That was when she saw them. 5 plastic sheets. They were laid out in a precise row, each one covering something roughly human-shaped. A buzzing started in her ears, and the edges of her vision went white. Her body refused to move. She stared, waiting for the shapes to shift or vanish. But they didn't. The lantern slipped in her shaking hand, nearly falling to the floor. She forced herself to step forward, though every instinct screamed to run. She knelt by the nearest sheet, her hands clumsy with dread. When she peeled back the plastic, the lantern beam fell on a young woman's face, waxen and sunken. Skin drawn tight across delicate cheekbones. Lips parted as though in a final, silent plea. A dark bruise encircled her throat. Lauren jerked back, choking on a sob. Her vision swam with black spots. It wasn't possible. Daniel loved her. He wasn't capable of this. But the evidence lay right in front of her, 5 times over. She dropped the plastic and stumbled from the crawl space, lantern clutched in numb fingers. Her knees nearly buckled on the stairs as she fled back into the kitchen. For a moment, she stood there in the bright morning light, trying to remember how to breathe. Then she remembered her phone. It took 3 tries to unlock the screen. When she finally managed to, 911, her voice came out hoarse and broken. "My name is Lauren Evans," she rasped. I think my husband, he's killed people. There are bodies under my house." The dispatcher's voice was calm, asking if she was alone, if she felt safe. Lauren could barely answer. She pressed her free hand to her mouth to stifle the sobs that were rising, unstoppable. As she waited for the sirens, Lauren looked around the kitchen at the framed photos on the walls. Daniel's smile stared back at her from every surface, and she wondered how she had ever believed she knew the man in those pictures. The squad cars pulled up to the curb in a quiet procession of flashing lights. Neighbors began to gather along the sidewalk, whispering behind their hands, craning their necks to see what could possibly have shattered the Evans' calm suburban facade. Lauren sat on the front steps, arms wrapped around her knees, her face streaked with silent tears. She didn't look up when the first officer approached, nor when another ducked into the basement with a flashlight and a hand pressed over his nose. Detective Claire Mendel arrived minutes later in an unmarked sedan. She was a lean woman in her 40s, her hair clipped back, her face sharp with focus. She crouched in front of Lauren, speaking in a low, steady voice. "Mrs. Evans," she began gently, "you did the right thing calling us. I need you to tell me exactly what you found." Lauren swallowed hard, her throat raw. "There's a hidden room, under the basement. There are bodies. I don't know how many. 5, maybe." Detective Mendel nodded once, then turned her attention to the officers emerging pale-faced from the house. One shook his head as if trying to dislodge what he'd seen. "Secure the perimeter," Mendel ordered. "No one in or out until forensics has cataloged everything. We'll need CSU and the medical examiner." The detective's calm efficiency seemed to steady Lauren's spinning thoughts, if only a little. She felt suspended. In a nightmare, each moment more impossible than the last. Within the hour, a parade of specialists began filing in, crime scene technicians with cameras and evidence bags, a coroner's van idling at the curb. A photographer ducked under the yellow tape to capture the house from every angle. Lauren's phone vibrated in her pocket. Daniel's name flashed across the screen. She almost answered out of reflex. Almost. Her thumb hovered over the button as her mind conjured his face, his voice, *K, sweetheart. I'll be home late again, *. Her stomach lurched. She let the call ring out, then handed the phone to an officer without a word. Detective Mendel sat beside her on the step. "Where's your husband now?" He should be at work," Lauren whispered. "But I don't know." "We'll send units to his office," Mendel said. "You don't have to worry about that. Is there anyone you can stay with tonight?" Lauren shook her head. She had no family in the state. Daniel was her family, or had been until that morning. An officer stepped forward, his gloved hands clasping a small object in an evidence bag. He cleared his throat and addressed Mendel. "Detective, we found this near the bodies." Lauren's gaze flicked down. Inside the clear plastic, a delicate gold locket gleamed under the porch light. She recognized it immediately. It had belonged to Daniel's younger sister, Emily. Except Emily had disappeared when she was 19, nearly 10 years before Lauren met Daniel. Lauren had asked about it once. Daniel told her Emily ran away with a boyfriend, that his parents never recovered from the shame. But looking at the locket now, Lauren understood the truth she'd missed all these years. Her breath left her in a strangled gasp. She pressed a trembling hand over her mouth. Mendel's eyes sharpened. "Do you recognize this, Mrs. Evans?" It was his sister's," Lauren whispered. "He told me she ran away." Mendel exchanged a grim look with the officer. "That may be one of the..." Lauren's world tilted, the porch seeming to sway under her. Her own husband had killed his own sister and then lied, year after year, with the ease of a man telling you what you wanted to hear. Somewhere down the street, a neighbor was crying. The sound carried across the manicured lawns like a funeral hymn. Mendel stood and turned to her team. "We need to get Mrs. Evans to a safe location and start a formal interview. As soon as we confirm the suspect's whereabouts, He's to be brought in, no exceptions. Lauren closed her eyes, pressing her palms into her temples. Even behind her eyelids, she could still see the crawl space, the plastic sheets, the bruised skin. Her perfect husband had been living a second life all along. And now the question she could no longer avoid was as cold as the basement floor. How many others had there been? And had she ever truly been safe in her own home? The police moved Lauren quietly to a nearby hotel under an assumed name. The sterile room was a poor refuge from the storm tearing through her mind. Every shadow felt like a question. Every silence screamed with the weight of unspoken horrors. Detective Claire Mendel sat across from her at the small table, a notebook open and pen poised. Lauren's hands trembled as she clutched a cup of lukewarm coffee, the bitterness matching the dread curling inside her chest. "We need you to tell me everything you know about Daniel's past," Mendel said gently. Even the smallest detail could help. Lauren nodded, swallowing hard. He was always private. His childhood was complicated. He lost his parents when he was young. His sister Emily disappeared after that. "Did Daniel ever speak about her?" Mendel asked. "Only once. He said she ran away, left them behind." But now Lauren's voice broke. "Now I don't know what to believe." Mendel reached across the table, her hand briefly covering Lauren's. "We'll find the truth. But you have to be prepared for things to get worse before they get better." Outside, the news was already spinning the story. Reporters had swarmed the neighborhood, piecing together the nightmare one headline at a time. Lauren's phone buzzed incessantly, messages from friends, strangers, reporters begging for interviews. She silenced it, but the questions haunted her. How had she missed the signs? The lies? Back at the crime scene, forensic teams were uncovering more evidence. One officer called Mendel to the basement to show her something unusual found near the bodies, a small, worn diary belonging to one of the victims. Inside, scribbled in a shaky hand, were dates, names, and cryptic references to a man she only knew as D. The entries detailed meetings in secluded locations, whispered threats, and desperate pleas for help. Mendel's stomach tightened. This wasn't just a killing spree, it was calculated, personal. Lauren stared out the hotel window late that night, the city lights flickering like distant stars. She thought of the locket, the bruises, the plastic sheets, each detail a shard of a shattered dream. Her perfect husband was a stranger. But worse was the chilling thought that he might still be out there, somewhere, waiting. Detective Mendel and her team dove deeper into Daniel's past, peeling back layers that no one had ever bothered to look under. The missing years, those long, silent stretches in Daniel's history, were the darkest shadows in an already grim picture. Lauren sat across from Mendel in the sterile interview room, clutching a folder filled with old photographs the police had dug up. Some showed Daniel as a boy, smiling with his family. Others showed him as a young man, a stranger staring back with eyes colder than she remembered. He disappeared for nearly 5 years after his sister vanished, Mendel explained. No records, no jobs, no known addresses. Lauren's throat tightened. "I always thought those years were spent grieving, trying to put his life back together." Mendel shook her head. "We're starting to think something else was going on." As the investigation unfolded, the police uncovered reports from small towns across 3 states, reports of disappearances, strange sightings, and unexplained deaths. None had been linked to Daniel until now. One witness came forward, a woman who'd seen Daniel at a roadside diner late one night, acting strangely, as if watching for someone or something. "There's a pattern," Mendel said grimly. "Locations tied to Daniel's travel during those missing years coincide with the victims we've identified so far." Lauren's heart pounded. Each revelation was like a fresh wound. But the most terrifying discovery was yet to come. Late one evening, as Lauren sifted through boxes Daniel had kept in their attic, she found a journal hidden beneath a false floorboard. The pages were filled with chilling entries, confessions, detailed plans, and disturbing sketches. In his own handwriting, Daniel had chronicled his descent into darkness, his obsession with control, and his twisted justification for the murders. "I am not a monster," one passage read. "I am the only one who sees the truth." Lauren dropped the journal, tears streaming down her face. The man she loved wasn't just a killer, he was a calculating predator who had hidden his evil behind a mask of charm and love for years. The trial was a media frenzy. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and the courtroom thrummed with tension every time Daniel Evans entered the room. But inside, Lauren felt hollow, a ghost drifting through the wreckage of the life she once cherished. Detective Mendel sat beside Lauren in the gallery, her expression unreadable. The evidence was overwhelming. The bodies, the diary, the journal, the witness statements. Still, Daniel maintained his silence, refusing to answer the charges or show remorse. Then, in a moment that shocked everyone, the unexpected happened. During a recess on the third day, Daniel asked to speak privately with the prosecutor. What followed was a chilling confession, recorded in full by the court stenographer and played back during the trial. He admitted everything. He described the years of rage and obsession that had fueled his crimes, the twisted logic he used to justify the murders. He spoke coldly of control, power, and the darkness lurking beneath his carefully crafted facade. "I was the only one who understood," he said quietly. "They were all lies, masks, illusions. My family, my wife, none of it was real. The perfect husband was a performance." Lauren sat frozen, the walls closing in around her. The man who had held her hand, whispered promises in the dark, and built their dreams together was gone, replaced by a stranger with no conscience and no mercy. The judge sentenced Daniel to life without parole, but the victory felt hollow. For Lauren, the nightmare didn't end with the gavel's fall. It only marked the beginning of a long, painful journey to reclaim her shattered sense of self. Months later, as she stood in the garden of the house that had held so many secrets, Lauren finally felt a sliver of peace. The crawl space had been sealed and condemned. The bodies given proper burials. But some scars ran deeper than flesh and bone. And as she looked up at the sky, she knew that no matter how far she ran or how much time passed, the shadows of Daniel's secrets would always linger in the corners of her mind.